everybody. It's your girl Tawana B with Not Your Normal Conversation. I'm sitting here with DA Rollins, and I was talking to DA Rollins before this interview, and I just want to make it clear to everybody that she's here to answer all questions. She doesn't back down from those questions, but I ask that we be respectful of her as a human being and as a person who wants to address the community in a way that's helpful to everybody. So with that being said, I want to introduce you guys to DA Suffolk County DA Rachael Rollins. Rachael, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about.
I'm excited to have you here, and I thank you for answering my call. And just so everyone knows, she talks to everybody. She's very personable and she's very approachable. So in knowing that, then we can move forward and say that the questions that you ask her on the live feed, I'm going to send them to her office. She's going to answer them, and then I'm going to come back again on a show and answer all of your questions. She's willing to do that. So we're just going to take it from there. And DA Rollins, we'll just jump right into it because I know you have a hefty schedule today. So I just want to ask you, you have quite a resume. So before becoming Suffolk County DA, you served as a field district attorney with the National Labor Relations Board in Boston, but you also participated in assistant district attorney rotation in Brockton District Court. And you also worked as an assistant United States attorney with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, handling a variety of cases. But furthermore, you were selected by Governor Patrick Duvall's administration as the first person of color to serve as the General Counsel of Massachusetts. Now, what made you, with that impressive resume, decide that you were going to run for Suffolk County DA?
So, yeah, I decided to run when I was about 46 years old. And I had had a really great career up until that point. I went to law school locally at Northeastern and clerked and had a lot of really great jobs. I was tired, Tawana. I was tired of turning the TV on. And this is many years before George Floyd, many years before Ahmaud Arbery, many years before Breonna Taylor. It was 10 iterations of them before, right? Where I was just tired of seeing people that looked like me and you, or that they could be in our families, having interactions with law enforcement and losing their lives. And then not having any charges brought. And then not being able to sue the police because of qualified immunity. As a trained lawyer, I didn't just see the tremendous loss of a life, which is huge. I also saw the lack of government performing for an entire segment of society, Black people, right? We pay taxes into this system, and it doesn't benefit us the same way it does others, right? Our taxes pay for the mayor and the chief of police and the police department and the court system and the DAs, and if all they do is harm us or not help us when we need it and kill us, like, come on, it's just not fair. So that's why I said, that's it. I'm not going to argue any longer. I'm not going to yell at my TV and, shake my fist at it. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to run for office myself and I'm going to change the system from the inside. And that's what we did.
Absolutely. Now, when you first became Suffolk County DA, you had a list of things that you wanted to change because I do recall, now, just so you know, when you were running, I was incarcerated, so I was not allowed to vote for you. But I did feel like your campaign was to change things, right? And so, have you made those changes? And if not, what are the barriers that have stopped you from making those changes?
Were you at the forum that we had at the Suffolk County House of Corrections, or were you at a DOC?
I was at a DOC, but
okay.
I did actually get a chance to review you at the Suffolk County House of Corrections, and I thought that was very personable for you guys to do that, so that people can see you up close and personal and see what you had to offer. And the reason why I asked you that, DA Rollins, is because I know a lot of times when politicians, when they're running, they say, hey, I'm going to do all of these things. But I think we as a society and a community sometimes don't understand the roadblocks and the barriers that you come up against, even though you want to change some things. It may not be the right time, the right circumstances, or you're just hitting the brick wall. So tell me a little bit about that.
So one of the things I think, Tawana, that was different about me was when I ran for office, I met with tons of people in the community, right? I met with returning citizens. I met with members of law enforcement. I met with the criminal defense bar. I met with victims' families. I met with you name it, judges, probation officers, every single person that touched the clergy, that touched the system.
Right.
And I basically said, and even abolitionists that believe we shouldn't have jails, police, anything at all. Everyone that would meet with me, I would. And I said, if you had a magic wand and could change, and I'm talking about the municipal and district courts, which people call the people's courts, right? Where we have a lot more discretion, So I said, what would you change, right? And they're, to the person, they would say things like, there's just so much wasted time on these unnecessary, are they crimes? Yes, but they are non-violent, non-serious things that get people clogged up in the system, right?
Absolutely.
Where overwhelmingly what really brings them to the system is they are in the middle of a mental health crisis, either have a substance use disorder, have food or housing insecurity, or are homeless. Not all, but a lot of people fall into that in our municipal and district courts. And rather than penalizing them for that,
Right.
why aren't we saying, okay, non-violent, non-serious crime, no victim, and I'm not talking about the community at large. I'm not talking about a stabbing or a shooting or a rape or a murder where there is a known, discernible human that was harmed there. This is like the generic, you were trespassing and that makes it bad in Dorchester. Really?
Right.
For me, I just said, with my limited resources, am I going to waste or spend all of my time on those 15 or so types of crimes? Trespassing, driving on a suspended license, possession. I'm not talking about you're in a cartel with thousands of pounds of, heroin. No, I'm talking about you are a visible user who you don't need to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist to know that. Why are we wasting taxpayer dollars putting you at South Bay when we should be putting you in a program where you can get treatment? I want to take those resources and put them to the over 1,000 unsolved homicides we have in Boston, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere. Overwhelmingly Boston, right? So what I did was, after I met with everyone, I said, what would you change? I came up with a list with the help of amazing criminal defense lawyers and advocates and, activists. And then I said, I'm going to put it on my website 6 weeks before my election, my primary election, because there were 5 Democrats and we had to, only one was going to emerge to meet the Republican that was waiting for the general election. I put it on my website and I said, I want you to know who I'm going to be, not if, but when I win. I want you to, eyes wide open, vote for me because this is what I'm going to do. And I got a lot of people that said, wow, politicians usually don't promise. They're vague with their promises, so they can later say, I don't think I said it that way. It's like, no, it's written right here. This is what I'm going to do. And then we won out of that 5 with 42% of the vote. The next person had about 20 something. So we won with almost 20 points. And then we beat the Republican with 82% of the vote. And then within 3 months of joining office, Tawana, I issued what's called the Rollins memo, which instead of being a 1-page promise, it was a 66-page written in plain language. So you don't have to be, a judge on the Supreme Judicial Court to understand it. You can be my mom, who's a nurse, but not a lawyer, my daughter, who's 16, and I like to say, if you can enter the criminal legal system at 12, we need to make sure we're writing things so that 12-year-olds can understand it. Because if I can put you in DYS or have a probation officer or DCF oversight, you're part of the system and you're part of the solution too, as far as I'm concerned. So that's what we did. And we put it in writing so that we can be held accountable, but more importantly, so the community understands it. And then we made sure we have town halls 4 times a year. I come out. I'm in the community all the time, but I have literally just me and my senior executive team in Roxbury, in Mattapan, in Winthrop, in Chelsea was 2019. We've had a couple virtual ones because COVID's crazy this year. But I want to explain. I want to answer any question, even if they dislike me, even if it's something stupid that they want to say that's personal about me. Okay, that's not about my job. I'll answer it offline. do you have a question about me being the DA or any policies we have? But,
Right.
that's what I wanted to be, is an accessible, honest, authentic leader.
Right. And that's the reason why I invited you on this podcast, because I feel like at this point, what you want is what I'd like to see for the community, especially the Black and brown people. Because we as a whole, sometimes, in the community where people are suffering from poverty, some people can't even read and write, Rachel, to be able to know what your policies and procedures really are. So, like you said, from the beginning, they're angry at the system for the injustice, and that makes it even harder for them to understand. Which brings me to the next question. Have you encountered a failure of respect or lack of respect in the decisions you've made or your opinions from your colleagues or the police department because you're a minority woman?
Yeah, so, goodness. Yes, let me tell you back to what you said about can't read or write. I really believe as elected officials, it's our job to explain it to you, right?
You know,
Look, I'm the DA, but I'm also a mom of a 16-year-old and the guardian of two of my nieces as a result of those very issues we talked about. We've been honest with each other. You were in jail at one point with one of my youngest sister. I have siblings that have unfortunately cycled in and out of the criminal legal system. Some with choices they've made, others that did not believe they had a choice at all and found themselves in a circumstance where they had to make a decision, and they did. But none of them or you are defined by that very moment, right? The people that think they're the best, stop defining yourself by your best moment and stop defining yourself by your worst moment. It's usually somewhere in between that. So, of course, I've encountered challenges to my authority. So, as the district attorney of Suffolk County, there's 11 DAs in Massachusetts.
correct.
11 different counties. We are each the chief law enforcement officer of our county. So Suffolk is Boston, Chelsea, Winthrop, Revere. So it's hard. There's never been a woman ever in the history of Suffolk County, which dates back to 1806. The DA's office started, right? Man, 15 men, and then I won my election. And then there's never been a woman of color, of any color at all, in all of Massachusetts. So I'll be honest, in Suffolk County, we have a black sheriff, we have a black commissioner, we have a black U.S. Marshal, all right, which is federal, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Marshals. If you've seen the Harrison Ford movie, U.S. Marshal with, that movie, right? And Wesley Snipes, right? So, we have a black female chief of our Supreme Judicial Court, Kim Budd. So we have representation in with respect to race, but there are very few women, if any at all, in leadership in law enforcement. It is incredibly male dominated. And so there's been a lot of time where, I've had to gently and then sometimes not so gently remind people that, right, when Dan Conley had this job, you didn't try to jump in and do that. You just let Dan do his job. Why do you think you should be doing that with me, right? And I think the elephant in the room is we are both black women, right? I have to be excellent in order for me to even get a shot. I have to be 2 to 3 times better than mediocre people that fail upward, right? They lose a job and miraculously get an even better job. That doesn't happen for us. We are only promoted and hired on performance, not promise and potential, which men frequently are, and certain men in particular frequently are. So, look, I've had to push back, and full disclosure, I am a black woman. My dad is from Ireland. Mayo, Ireland is where his family is originally from. Second generation, my dad. My mom's family is from Barbados. Shout out to Barbados, right? First generation. Both of her parents are from there. I'm biracial, but no one ever looks at me and says, Rachel, that Irish DA in Suffolk County. No, they think I'm Cape Verdean, Dominican, Puerto Rican, or something, but they know I'm a woman of color. And, I bring that with me to work every single day. I bring the fact, Tawana, that I have, and I'm not ashamed of it. I don't wear it as a badge of honor, but I am not ashamed that I have prosecuted people in the same courthouse in the Moakley building that I watched my younger brother get sentenced in, right? And walking through that metal detector as an assistant United States attorney felt very different than walking through that metal detector as the loved one of a criminal defendant.
Absolutely.
And I was a beloved former employee of that office. So if I felt that way, Tawana, imagine what families feel that way. And add to that, if you are not fluent in English, you speak Cape Verdean Creole or Vietnamese or Haitian Creole, are there people that are wanding you down and taking your cell phone and your ID that speak Haitian Creole? No. Are there people that speak Vietnamese or Mandarin or French or, Urdu or any sort of Muslim language? No. So you don't feel welcome when you don't see yourself in these places. And I get it. The DA's office is usually not an office you ever want to see, right? Because we're usually coming because you've been prosecuted, you've been alleged to have committed a crime. What I want to change about that is, in my first year, Tawana, we gave out over $100,000 in grants to the community. And when I inherited this office, the community used to be exclusively West Roxbury, South Boston, and Charlestown. Are they parts of Suffolk County? Of course they are. Do they see terrible bouts with substance use disorder and overdoses? Yes, they do. What I made sure was that Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, parts of Chelsea, and even Revere got love as well, because we are also dealing with those substance use disorders all up and down Mass Ave and Melnia Cass, but we have gun violence, we have knife violence, right? We have domestic violence, we have human trafficking. I mean, we have all of these things that we're seeing, and unless you have a lived experience, you don't even see something wrong with West Roxbury, South Boston, and Charlestown. When you see that list, you're, oh, this is great. If you're a person of color, you're like, I'm sorry. So the three, least diverse parts of our Suffolk County are getting the most of our money. Can we at least make this partially fair, right? So you bet they still got some, but they didn't get all. We made sure we always look at things with an equity lens.
Absolutely. So there's a substantial amount of commentary in the world about releasing or providing resources and programming to nonviolent individuals. Now, this continues to not address the issue of violence, and the only way we will end mass incarceration is by addressing the violence. What is your perspective on the issue? Because I was formerly a nonviolent offender, but I found often when I would be at MCI Framingham, I was doing time with a woman who had a vehicular homicide. She did 18 months while I was serving a 5-year sentence. So again, the color of our skin, to me, separated us. She was white, I was black. Granted, it wasn't my first time, but when DAs talk about nonviolent offenses, it's harm against an institution, and nobody died. So
100%. I mean, when we look, my first case, one of the first big cases I handled as a criminal defense attorney, before I got in the U.S. Attorney's Office, was a matter where the person we were representing, I'm not joking, was looking at 300 months. And I literally, Tawana, had to pull out a calculator and divide 300 by 12 and realize that was 25 American years for selling an 8-ball, right? And not to be mean, nobody's saying that doesn't cause harm and there aren't people, but we have seen, I'm the DA, I handle homicides, right? The previous administration was willing to accept a second-degree murder, 15-year parole eligible with Aaron Hernandez for his double homicide, 15 years for a body, a person you killed who is never coming back, 25 years for drugs. It's so what we have to be willing to do is look at this huge ball of yarn that's super tight and slowly start, pulling out that thread and undoing it. And for some people, it's just too overwhelming. Like, no, we just have to keep going the way it is. And if it's not broke, don't fix. No, it is broken. It's not broken for you. It's broken for poor Black and brown communities and immigrants and people that can't afford or don't have a father that's a judge or an uncle that's a clerk or a this that's a that, right? And is able to whisk their way through the system. I am invested in that hard work of like pulling that first piece of thread out and then undoing it and having really tough conversations, right? So when we talk about substance use disorder, Tawana, not just when I'm looking at you and a face that could be my, daughter or younger sister or something like that, when I'm in West Roxbury, when I'm in all law enforcement rooms, which overwhelmingly are male and don't have a lot of diversity in the room, some, but not a lot, I have no problem saying, why I'm different is I have no problem admitting that the public health crisis you are now screaming about with opioids, you didn't give a damn when it was crack and heroin in the 80s and 90s and the people looked like me or you.
Absolutely.
You didn't care because it couldn't have been your son or husband or daughter or grandmother or uncle or neighbor or boyfriend or husband, right? Because it didn't affect you, or impact you, you didn't care. And that's where all the mass incarceration started. And we look now, and I'm Suffolk County, I'm at ground zero at Mass Ave and Melnia Cass. And I want to make sure people understand, I think our community also thinks, I'm not the police. The police are the ones that arrest. They then bring it to me, and I either say, get that out of here, or okay, we'll look at that and see whether we can meet our burden in court with the evidence you've given us to prove this case to either a judge or a jury of that defendant's peers, right? So for me, I look at, Mass Ave and Melnia Cass and say, we have so much harm that has come out of that area, right? Out of people where these drugs were pumped into our communities. We now know that it is a failed war on drugs, and and we are still seeing generational harm, decades later, of people that are branded with criminal histories, and or have lost the opportunity at liberty and life and job and other things like that as a result of a felony conviction that we now know was really a health issue. So we have to say that out loud and then get to the work. But what I refuse to do is, people love, even look at this stuff with the Capitol now, where all these Republicans are like, we need to be unified. It's, I'm the oldest of five. I would give you a great example. If my brother walked up to me and slapped me dead in the face and then said, from this moment forth, we're going to have peace. No, we're not. I'm about to punch you dead in the, you don't get to slap me and then say, from this point forward, we have peace. I get to slap you back. So it's just a matter of that. And we have always been the people slapped. We have never been the slappers, right? And even when we are violent, right? When you look at this coming up this weekend, Martin Luther King weekend, and people look at Martin and look at and Malcolm. Malcolm wasn't affirmatively violent. He was just saying, if you hurt me, I'm punching you back. Like, you don't get to do that to me, right?